Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland. Here I am in Bucharest, the capital of Romania. So showing you a bit of the National Bank, okay? And this was built in 1889. Anyway, so I'm going to give you a tour of this historic area of the Lipscani area. Lipscani is derived from Leipzig, as there are lots of German merchants here. So look at that above the windows. They've got these, how do you put them? These heads carved in. Look at the handiwork on the stone. Not sure the relief sculptures there on those arches. And up here, these figures like that. Gorgeous, hey? And they've cleaned up the stone. You always see a Romanian flag and the European Union flag, National Bank of Romania at the top, Banca Națională a României. Oh, sorry, I don't want to do that. I don't want to change the brightness. I want to zoom out. Okay, so this is where tourists are inclined to come. I'm not filming me because I've got to film stuff and I don't have a selfie stick. So you can get a guided tour like this lady over there is giving people a guided tour. And then some historic foundations. Look down into the old cellar there. So there are lots of the high-end restaurants around here. Hotels tend to be a little bit further out because it'd be a bit too cramped for a hotel with the modern facilities you need and the parking you need. So it's a pedestrian zone, as you can see. We've got some cobblestone up here, but do watch out if you come here because some of the cobblestones are loose. They need to improve that. So the city's improved very considerably since I first visited 12 years ago. So another bank right up there. That's a very handsome Belle Epoque architecture. Rembrandt Hotel. A lot of, you see the Dutch flag, and then mainly the orange one with the Dutch flag and the ensign, as in lots of Dutch expatriates used to socialise here. Because Heineken, that's Dutch as well, I think, actually. What else was I going to point out? So, you know, since Romania joined the European Union in 2007, huge numbers of Romanians, well over 10% of the population, have moved west to other European Union countries, principally to France, Italy, the United Kingdom, Germany, the Netherlands, Austria, occasionally to Greece. But obviously the employment situation in Greece is so bad that hardly anybody goes there now. The Greeks are largely leaving. A lot of used to go to Spain until, say, the credit crunch 10 years ago. Now, until communism ended in 1989, it was very difficult for Romanians to be allowed to go abroad. Always impossible to escape. Only trusted communists allowed out of the country to go to the Olympics, to be diplomats, to go to symposia, things of that nature. And they're relatively privileged people who are allowed out because the temptation to stay if you weren't privileged in Romania would be overwhelming. But anyway, in the 90s they started to go abroad, and Italy was one of the nearest reasonably affluent countries, so a lot of Romanians went there, and obviously the language is fairly easy to learn because Romanian is so close to Latin, and obviously Italian got of Latin. So this is what I'm talking about. Very attractive, an old town hostel here. So this is Old Town. So it's Bucharest. Its name derives from Bucur in Romanian language, meaning joy. It's a city of joy, people call it. Okay, another financial institute right at the end of the street, and sort of an atrium effect. If you see right up there, the glass bit in the and up in the cupola, likewise to admit the maximum amount of natural light. Okay. So we don't want to change the amount of light, we want to zoom out. There we go. And look at some of the dishes they're serving here. But these will be relatively pricey restaurants. So you get a bit further out, go to restaurants which are not aimed at tourists, it'll be a lot more reasonable. Now, you might think people here do nothing but eat and drink, but the weather's still good because of the time of year. So they're quite close to Greece. There's only Bulgaria in between. Romania is about 3 times the size of Bulgaria in both area and population. Then there's Greece. Now, this is an Orthodox Christian country. Obviously, it's a secular state. For those who profess any religion, up to 90% of them are Orthodox Christians. I remember when I first came here, I foolishly assumed that it was a Catholic country because of the Latin basis of the language, but no, it's Orthodox. Look at this, St. Patrick's. There are various Irish pubs. There's the Dubliner as well. Because they're an Orthodox country, they share that with various countries in the region, such as Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Russia, Serbia, and so forth. Now, the Romanian Orthodox Church is in full communion with the Greek Orthodox Church, not the Russian Orthodox Church. Look, another Irish pub, only established 10 years ago. There's a small Irish community. The Irish embassy has only got 2 diplomats. So there have been Irish babies born here over 10 years ago. Okay, Micul Paris, as in the little Paris. So they used to call it that because In the late 19th century, this country was newly independent, and they tried to imitate France. France was really at the zenith of its cultural influence around the world, particularly in Eastern Europe. So they, for example, the French government had a sort of how to put it, like an announcement newspaper, not really articles, just announcements, called Le Bulletin, and the Romanians had set up one called Buletinul, just the same thing like bulletin, or using the word brevet or whatever, adopting the Napoleonic Code, not entirely, but for the most part. Wow, look at that place. You might want to be locked up in Sing Sing in here. So there was quite a lot of sex tourism. See, look, they've got here stuff in Hebrew. Anyway, Romania had a large Jewish community. In 1939, it would have been 10% of the population, particularly in Bucharest, but then particularly some of the northern cities in Transylvania or in Moldova. Now, the Republic of Moldova was part of Romania at the time. But anyway, then the Third Reich came along, and so in the Holocaust, huge numbers of Romanian Jews were murdered, including Michael Howard's grandmother. But anyway, those who survived the Second World War largely chose to move to Israel immediately after the Second World War. If they didn't, they were trapped. They weren't allowed out. And then Ceausescu in the 70s decided he would allow them to go to Israel if the Israelis paid him. They had to be bought out. And so in the 70s, almost the entire Romanian Jewish population departed the country. And that was that, because he needed hard currency. So for enough dollars, they could be allowed out. And then in the 90s, obviously the country opened up again, and some of these Romanian Israelis came back, or their children and so on. So that was a bit of a change. What else? So there's a very small Romanian Jewish community. There are a few synagogues here in Bucharest, but it's a fraction of what it once was. It's about 1 in 1,000 people here is Jewish. There's that actress Maya Morgenstern who appeared at the Passion of the Christ, and apparently Mel Gibson was immensely interested in her because her name, Morgenstern, morning star, and Mary means morning star in Hebrew. So getting an idea of what Lipscani is all about. So kind of quite low rise. So Romania obviously dates back to the early Middle Ages, and only after the country became autonomous in 1859, it was nominally part of the Ottoman Empire as a result of a treaty between Russia and the Ottoman Empire. Be ruled by a Christian prince, and they got one in from one of the German states, Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen, with Karol I, founding the dynasty. But anyway, there's very little Turkish influence left. But there is a bit of a Turkish community that never left, and there are a few who came back in the 90s, because Romania immediately said Turks can come without a visa, Turkey said Romanians can come without a visa. Turkey wasn't a wealthy country at all in the 90s, the early 90s, so they weren't too worried about large-scale immigration. Anything else I should point out about this and that? Maybe not. More of Lipscani. Sorry, my train of thought has been derailed. You get the idea. There's lots of lap dancing places and nightclubs. Now, a nightclub really can be a night spot, but it could be a brothel as well. It's not as flagrant as it was once. You see very skanky hookers hanging around the railway station. Not many stray dogs now. There used to be so many of them, because when Ceausescu, he brought people in from the villages in the 60s and living in flats, they felt they couldn't have their dog in the flats, so they left it free on the street and fed it, and people fed them. They became known as community dogs, and they bred, obviously. So they're all over the place. In a park, I dare not walk off the path lest a dog come and bite me. I've been bitten twice, never seriously. The dog will say, "This is my territory, back off." And there are other things about these dogs. There are not too many in this area, but in the outlying areas, some of the residential areas, they're lots. So they often have a yellow tag in their area, supposed to be neutered. But other people are saying that's not true. The company that's paid to do it simply puts the tag in, doesn't bother neutering them. And they're going to put some down, and Brigitte Bardot would fly in to plead for their lives. Well, why don't you bring them to your house? You can afford to. Other people, it's a nuisance, and obviously there's dog dung everywhere. But the city's looking better and better. They've done things up, they've cleaned up the stone, because, I mean, frankly, it was a bit of a dump when I first came, and some of the streets on the edge of the city weren't even paved. See people in horse-drawn carriages on the edge of the city, not to be quaint, but simply that was a practical means of getting around, so they thought. Come down to Piazza Unirii, as in Unity Square. There's a big shopping mall over there. It's not spectacular. Look, Big Ben, an English pub. Anything else to see? Oh no, a striptease place. This is the river Dambovitsa. It's the river that bisects the city. It is not big or clever. it's very shallow and narrow. You may be disappointed. There's a series of lakes just north of the city centre in Herăstrău Park, but they've very much contained it because of course used to flood long ago and the city is very flat. So what else can I say? There are no boats going up and down it, that's that. So because the system of dams and locks, they control the flow of water. So that's that really for the Lipscani area. There are a few minor streets I could have shown you there. But it's not spectacular, but you know, it's pleasant. It's worth visiting. There are a few ruins, old historic churches. Far more of those, and obviously many of them demolished in the communist era. Okay, I'll switch it off now.